Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. The term climate denier is a slur intended to associate people who tell the truth about climate with Holocaust deniers. A Holocaust denier means someone who rejects or ignores the history of the Holocaust. In this video, we're going to look at some history of climate and find out who the real deniers are. The graph on the left shows the world's primary energy consumption by source since the year 1800. You can see that the use of fossil fuels has greatly increased since the year 1900 and continues to increase now. You can also see that wind and solar are nearly irrelevant in the big picture. The graph on the right shows life expectancy over the same time period. Over the last couple hundred years, life expectancy has more than doubled. As low-cost, reliable fuels became available, life expectancy, not surprisingly, increased as well. Last time Earth was at net zero was around 1850, when life expectancy was less than 30 years. History shows us that fossil fuels don't kill people. What kills people is a lack of enough energy. People who are pushing for net zero are the ones who are rejecting history. They are the true climate deniers. I posted this tweet a couple of days ago. There's no correlation between CO2 and temperature or CO2 and burn acreage. The climate scam is based on misinformation, propaganda, and junk science. The graph on the left shows how as carbon dioxide has increased in the atmosphere, the average maximum temperature in the United States has plummeted. And the graph on the right shows that burn acreage in the United States has greatly decreased over the last century as carbon dioxide levels have increased in the atmosphere. There's no correlation between heat waves or forest fires and carbon dioxide. In fact, the empirical data shows the exact opposite. History doesn't support the climate scam. So people who make their living pushing this nonsense use every excuse they can to reject or ignore history. Someone responded to my tweet with this PolitiFact fact check. PolitiFact is a political website which claimed that the burn acreage data is flawed. Their argument is based on the fact that prior to the year 1983, the number of U.S. forest fires was counted in a different way. You can see that there's a large discontinuity at the year 1983 in the number of forest fires data. With the data that's available, there's no meaningful way to compare the number of forest fires prior to 1983 with the number of forest fires after 1983. But the burn acreage graph is very different. There's no discontinuity at the year 1983, and there's no reason to believe that the data prior to 1983 is flawed. PolitiFact is complaining about the wrong data set. The U.S. Forest Service has been documenting for a very long time the high burn acreage prior to the year 1960 in the United States. In this 1945 publication, the Forest Service said, every year an average of 31 million acres of forest land is burned over, an area larger than the state of New York. The New York Times documented very precisely burn acreage in the United States in the year 1937 and in 1936. And the numbers which the New York Times used were identical to the ones in this Forest Service graph. Additionally, the United States Forest Service has documented that burn acreage in the United States is down more than 90% since pre-industrial times. But people pushing the climate scam reject history. They are climate deniers. Tom Lambert wrote, there are more than 28 million acres in Ohio. The graph shows that areas the size of Ohio or more burned every year between 1926 and 1944. Very doubtful. Tom rejects history because it doesn't suit his view of the world. Here's an article from 1931. Forest fires in the United States last year swept over a total of more than 52 million acres, an area greater than the states of Ohio and Indiana combined. 1931 had the second highest burn acreage on record in the United States. The whole world was suffering from freak weather. America has drought and heat waves. Europe suffers from rain and cold spells. Indies and China hit by heavy floods. Greece received no rain since May. Japan had a typhoon to leave death on the island of Formosa. China was the theater of untold suffering and floods. The deadliest flood in world history occurred during August 1931 in China. At least 4 million people were killed. August 21st, 1931. Chinese cities being wiped out by greatest flood known in history of entire world. 12 million homes have been destroyed by the calamity and 55 million people are affected, at least 1/5 of whom are utterly destitute. Total expanse of the flood probably exceeds 70,000 square miles. That's 1.5 times the area of the state of New York, and it's larger than England and Wales combined. The flooded area was 1,000 miles long and 50 miles wide. At the same time, the United States was experiencing a terrible drought, with people starving in many different states. The Red Cross described their drought relief as being the greatest relief they've given in any disaster. That same summer, the Eastern Hemisphere recorded their highest temperature ever recorded, 55 degrees Celsius or 131 degrees Fahrenheit in Tunisia. 1931 set a record in the United States for the area of the country which got extremely hot. 93% of the country reached 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius sometime during the year. Since then, the area of the United States affected by very hot weather has plummeted, with this year so far being 6th lowest on record. This is what people pushing the climate scam want others to believe the 1930s were like. But this is what the 1930s actually looked like. 1931 brought record heat, record fires, record floods, record drought, and all sorts of other calamities. The climate deniers are the people who want you to believe that the climate was nice and stable when carbon dioxide levels were lower. Toto has been pulling back the curtain on the climate scam for more than 15 years. You can visit him, Kyrie, Caesar, Toki, Upla, and the 4 new puppies on the web at realclimatescience.com.